We just witnessed the greatest UFC event in the company's history. I think this was definitely better than 300 because of like even though that card was loaded, just with like the upsets or like I mean really the main upset like in the main event. And every this is the only UFC event in history where every fight ended in a knockout. Lived up to the hype. Which that's the thing about the UFC that's so great and why it's the best sport in the world is because it never disappoints. Anytime they go, for something huge like having this fight at the White House, huge. Not so, I mean, I was going to say the Sphere, but the Sphere card wasn't that great. But I mean, you know what I mean. Like whenever they try to do something big like this, it always lives up to the hype. And like we can just go right into the main event: Ilia Topuria and Justin Gaethje. And I'm also going to recap my picks, which obviously I missed on this one, along with 99% of everyone else that made a pick. Even Gaethje fans didn't think he would win. Maybe like a small portion of them. But you couldn't write a better like it's literally like a fucking movie that like the way this played out. It's at the White House. Even Gaethje's like everything surrounding it. Gaethje's whole career where he kind of looked like he was going to be like a Poirier or a Tony Ferguson, like a guy who has a great resume, has beaten so many people, but just can never get that undisputed gold. And so you have all of that leading into the fight. Huge underdog, and Ilia Topuria has looked like, not necessarily there with the resume yet, but he's looked like a guy that could very well become the greatest of all time. Arguably, before the fight, arguably the best fighter that we have ever seen compete in the UFC. So then you have all of that. It's at the White House. And then it's almost like it's supposed to be for the 250th birthday of America, go and beat the British, like in a probably even bigger upset than Gaethje and Topuria. It's like everything just played out so perfectly for America, like Gaethje in America. And I really wasn't I was kind of 50-50 in terms of who I was going to cheer for. I didn't really care as much. I slightly leaned towards Gaethje because he's American and all that. He's beefing with Strickland, my boy. But, I just couldn't help it. And, he's American at the end of the day. Maybe uneducated, but he's American. And in the first round, it really was a deal of just waiting for when it was going to happen. Anytime that there's an Ilia fight, it's just like, okay, when's the shot going to happen? Just when's it going to... Like, he could get pieced up because Gaethje started really well with his jab, just peppering him, landing good uppercuts. And really, I was saying that Gaethje's only way to win was if he basically just went on the attack and pressured him and, threw missiles and just hoped that he lands one, which he kind of did that. Not really. So, like, that was kind of... I got some aspects right, but pretty much not. But I did not think that... It's so crazy because you see Ilia just outclass and knock out these extremely technical guys like Volkanovski, Holloway. And, Oliveira is not necessarily as great on the feet, but, Oliveira goes and he looks amazing, like, in his next two fights after that with his grappling. And then Ilia goes and, gets him in a crucifix and then sleeps him. It just really is, there's always someone out there that can beat you. Like, no man is invincible. And like how we saw with Hamzat, there is always somebody out there that has the little specific things to beat you. Like, everything on paper, everything about this fight, like, there was no way that Justin Gaethje was going to win. Because it's like, okay, they stand and say they just go in exchange and, have like this brawl. Topuria, everyone would have said Topuria wins that fight. And then even in like a technical back and forth, Gaethje got annihilated by Max Holloway, picked apart. And even Paddy which speaking of, we're going to get to Paddy later, talk about him and what this means for him. Even Paddy actually had some good, he took a round off Justin Gaethje purely on the feet. And he had a lot of good moments in that just got overshadowed by Gaethje landing bombs. But it was like there's literally everything on paper. It just looked like a horrible stylistic matchup for Gaethje. And then it's just, I don't know there's just little specific things that, is like a kryptonite. And like with Strickland and Hamzat, Strickland had the perfect defensive grappling to be able to make Hamzat work. without, basically survive, but not just survive, but make him work, make him tired, trying to like toss him back to the ground and doing all this stuff, like similar to how Usman did it. And yeah, making him tired and then being able to outstrike him and pretty much pick him apart on the feet. And like with Gaethje, back into like watching the fight live, first round, piecing him up with his jab. And I'm just kind of thinking, okay, Gaethje's doing well, but it just when's the shot going to land? And Topuria landed a few clean right hands. I was like, how did he not go out? Because, you see, which I guess it was an accumulation of damage, but you see Holloway go and slump Gaethje out cold just 2 years ago. And that's when I was really surprised that Gaethje's chin was holding up. And I was like, I thought those were the shots that were supposed to take him out. And, then Ilia started, like, his eyes started getting swollen. He got cut. And then you could tell, like, because he's a little pretty boy, he's, like, wiping his eye, like, constantly, like, looking at it. And it's almost like that moment of realization where it's like, shit, I'm actually I'm in a fight, and which he probably was still very confident because he did land a lot of good shots in the first round. Gaethje won the first round, but he did have his moments too. Like, and then every time you pin him against the cage, I was like, here it comes, dude. He's just going to start, throwing missiles. And then he started going to the body, like in the second round, started going to the body, and that was really effective. And like even Gaethje said after that hurt him, and it looked like Topuria was going to go and finish the fight. But, I mean, even at fucking 37 years of age, old man Gaethje still holding up, dude. And really, he saved himself, or Topuria fumbled by trying to wrestle and go for submissions, because then Gaethje was able to recover. And then the third round, because also in the second round, Topuria went all out for the finish. So then you get to the third round, and he looked tired. He was basically just standing in front of Gaethje, not doing anything. No head movement. And that's where Gaethje started again, landing with his jab. And he would basically grab Ilia and then try to like throw uppercuts. And then he followed it up with a few right hands that almost, I think it was like in the middle of the third round where he threw that right hand that looked like it was going to end it. And from there, it was just kind of like Ilia does not, like the power is, it was in the back of my mind, it is like, which I think this is how it was for everyone else, but just like, he still has that power to put out Gaethje. So I was just like, oh, he could, if he just lands one, he can still end it. But then it looked like, okay, he's nowhere near as fresh as he was at the beginning. And Gaethje ate his hardest shots. Like when he landed, I think he landed like 3 right hands in the first round when they're both fresh, and he ate it. So then it was like, as the rounds go on, it's like, even if he does land, he's significantly less powerful. He's been brutally beaten. So it's like, Gaethje's got it in the bag. And then, of course, they go and fuck it up with like the doctor. And like, they give him extra time. I thought they were going to stop it right there. Like at the end of the third round, I thought that was going to be it. But then like Topuria was like, I don't know what happened, because the doctor was like, no, he's done. But then he started talking to some other guy and then talked to Goddard, got some extra time, and they kept it going, which I was praying. I was like, please let it keep going. Don't let this be like a stoppage. And then it's going to be like, well, what would have happened if he kept, what if it did keep going? Like, I just wanted it to be solidified, like no questions surrounding it. So then they do continue. And then Topuria actually does look a lot better. He looks more, which that's where it was rigged. He looked a lot fresher because he got the extra time. And Ilia like started the round good and fought most of the round good, but then towards the end of the fourth round, Gaethje then, I don't remember what it was, but I know he landed a few shots that got him right back into the state that he was in the third round. And then he like shoots in for a takedown. It's a sloppy takedown. Gaethje stuffs it and then lands brutal knee to the body. Like if that would have kept going, he could have finished it right there, but it was just, he got lucky. It was at the end of the round. And then he gets on the stool and it's like, okay, yeah, this is done. His face is completely mangled and he looked defeated. Like that was it. Like his brother was like, no, we're going to finish this fight. But he didn't quit, but he kind of quit. You know what I mean? Like he was on the stool, head down. He was done. And then they called it. I mean, that is why the sport, like, it's the greatest sport in the world where you can have stuff. There's no other sport that replicates that feeling. Like, I'm a huge football fan, like NFL, college football, but there's no feeling that replicates it. So now Justin Gaethje is the undisputed lightweight champion, and that is huge for his legacy. Like, now that puts him in a, because like having a win against, being the first person to beat Ilia Topuria, who has been considered arguably the best fighter we've ever seen in the UFC, and to beat him in the way that he did. And then like he has a lot of other wins on his resume. He has Poirier, he has 2 wins against Fizzy, which that's, I mean, not that bad. But he has Tony Ferguson, which like he's the one that caused his losing streak. Cerrone, Chandler. Wait, maybe his resume isn't that great. But I mean, simply anybody that would have that win, like being the first person to beat Ilia Topuria. If you look at the grand scheme of like all time in the UFC, that is one of the best wins that you could possibly have. So now you're talking like he's finally an undisputed champion. He's not going to be like Tony Ferguson's or the Dustin Poiriers. And that kind of solidifies himself like top 20, I think. 15. That's what I'm gonna have to do. I'm gonna have to make a GOAT list and like really look at it. But yeah, he's the champ. And the thing is, he's now the undisputed champ. But now later in the year, we're gonna have a vacant title because he is gonna retire. And there is literally no reason for him to defend the title. Like, because again, like I said earlier, you could not make a better script. Like, you could not end a career better than that. And he can just ride off into the sunset, finally became the undisputed champ, took out Ilia Topuria, arguably the greatest fighter we've seen. I mean, obviously not now, but before, going into that fight. And so yeah, I'm almost certain that we're going to have a vacant, he's going to retire, we'll have a vacant title later this year. And then, like I said earlier, we owe Paddy Pimblett a huge apology. Because now everybody, which y'all know, I mean, this just can be me being biased because Paddy's one of my favorite fighters. But you really do have to think about, so many people were all over Paddy after that loss. Like, old man Gaethje, like that was supposed to be a layup for him so that it could be Paddy versus Ilia. But now seeing Paddy arguably put up a better fight than Ilia. I mean, he didn't quit, which I mean, technically Ilia quit. Or he got brutally beaten to the point where he had to quit. Paddy at least was still swinging. Like, the thing is, people think that Gaethje dominated that fight, which he kind of did, but he kind of didn't. Like, really, since Gaethje was landing absolute bombs, it kind of overshadows all the good moments Paddy had. Because if you rewatch the first round, there was that huge moment for Gaethje. But then the rest of that round, like even early and then a little bit after that, Paddy landed a lot of good shots. And that's the thing too. It was on like the same playing field as Ilia and Gaethje, where it was basically a pure kickboxing match. Sometimes it went to the ground. And second round, it was kind of even. And then really Gaethje, the reason that the whole like huge sequence in the second round happened was because Gaethje threw a jab, but then his thumb was sticking out, scratches Paddy in the eye, which that's why he fell over. And then like Gaethje landed brutal ground and pound. So then he got beat bad. And then Paddy had a really good third round on the feet, landed good shots. Fourth round, got pieced up on the feet. Fifth round, Gaethje won, but it was actually pretty competitive. So now it's like, before where it's like, oh, Paddy he sucks. He finally got exposed, old man Gaethje. But now we see Gaethje beat Ilia even worse than he did Paddy. And it's like, Paddy might actually still be that good. Since he had good moments on the feet against Gaethje. So don't be surprised too. Like, Paddy's definitely be calling for Gaethje to have a rematch, which if Gaethje did decide to stay, that might actually be a possibility since their first fight was so great. But there's no way. I don't think Gaethje's going to stay. He's going to retire. So then if you have a vacant title, I wouldn't be surprised if they end up, this obviously would depend on if Paddy beats BSD, which I think he does. If Paddy beats BSD, do not be surprised if they end up having Ilia versus Paddy for the vacant title. Or No, not even that. Because also, like, who knows what's going to happen with Ilia now? When you get beaten that bad, like physically dominated, like he might have shattered ribs, broken orbitals. He genuinely might not ever fight again. Because, and then also just being mentally broken, how confident he was, and then to finally get beat. And like he might be out again for a long time because of how badly he got beat. Like, the injuries he might have suffered. So then if Ilya can't fight, or like I mean, who knows, like if he goes and does something else, or I mean, I really don't know. But I actually do think he might be out for a while. So if they don't have Ilya and Paddy for a vacant title, which could be a possibility, there actually might be a better chance that you end up having Paddy versus Oliveira. I guarantee, because that's also especially if Paddy goes and beats BSD, that would be a huge fight with Oliveira and Paddy. Because also now Paddy, if he can go and get a win, and then knowing how good Gaethje is now, and that loss really doesn't look bad at all anymore, then Paddy's single-handedly gained aura just because of that fight happening. That makes him look so much better. So honestly, I think that's even more likely instead of Ilia and Paddy. I think vacant title at the end of the year, you have Charles versus Paddy. Because which I'll end up making, predictions for that fight. But I really do think that Paddy goes and beats BSD. So yeah, Topuria and Gaethje. And I mean, that was great because it was just a sick fight. But now we'll go to the co-main event. And this was my ball knowledge pick. Because a good amount of people were picking Pereira. Which even though if you look back, my analysis wasn't that great. Because I really was just kind of like, I didn't know who to pick. But really, and I didn't watch, like for a lot of the other fights, I went and rewatched stuff. But like for Gane and Pereira, I just didn't. But throughout like the fight week, the build-up, I just kind of had the vibe and perception that Ciryl Gane is way better than people think. And Pereira has shown a lot of flaws. Like he is great, but I mean, I don't think he's that good. I just don't. Like a lot of his wins, it's like, oh, he has all these title wins and defenses, but it's like, oh, he beat however many former champions. But it's like Jamal Hill is considered a former champion. And the fact that he lost 2 rounds against Khalil Roundtree, who I also don't think is that good. And then we see Yuri get knocked out. Really, his only impressive wins at this point, to me, are Ankalaev, which he also got beaten in before, or got beat by him before, and Strickland, which also nobody had any, which I'm not saying that like Strickland would go and beat him in a rematch, but like that's when nobody knew about Pereira or what he could do. And like Strickland didn't try to wrestle, I'm not even going to get into, I'm not going to let my bias, whatever. But I do think his only great wins are Ankalaev and Strickland. Like Jamal Hill, no. Yuri, twice, no. Roundtree, no. So that was kind of my thought process. Thought process going into it. That Ciryl Gane is very underrated. And even though lighter man skill exists, it's kind of a deal where he added so much weight. And he looked like a heavyweight, but like Ciryl Gane was fucking jacked as a heavyweight. Like he's a real heavyweight. And he's been fighting and he's been so used to that, the movement, everything. Fighting at that weight. And then talking about like, watching it live. It was kind of like they were both feeling each other out, which was kind of expected. Pretty even. Gane was landing a few good jabs. Pereira, I thought the head kicks were money, that he just needed to keep ripping the head kicks because Gane only used one arm to block it, which really you should use. I mean, I did do MMA, but, I'm not a UFC fighter. But he just, sometimes that can get through if you're only using one arm. And that was working somewhat decent early in the fight. But yeah, they were kind of just going tit for tat a little bit. Not much was happening. And then Pereira landed a few good right hands at the very end of the round. But that's when I knew too, I was like, Gane, because they were clean too. Like they were pretty hard shots where it was like, oh, and Gane really didn't seem phased at all. And that's when I kind of thought like, oh, he wasn't really hurt at all from like, so he wasn't hurt very much by those solid shots. So I'm like, okay, he can eat the shots. And then out of nowhere, Gane goes and lands that jab. It's so crazy because it's like, I thought that also like not having to cut weight, your chin's better. But I mean, I guess it is just like he's a real heavy, like those are massive dudes. Like they just have that power. Even though you aren't cutting weight and you're bigger, the heavyweights just hit, like it doesn't matter. Heavyweights still get knocked out because they're both just massive. And I was like, it's so crazy whenever you see a guy just drop. And it's like unfathomable almost. Not that like I didn't see it coming, but like it's just such a weird feeling. And then I thought it was it from there, but then he actually started surviving. I was like, okay, he might actually be able to get out of this. But then whenever they got back up, you could see he was still really hurt. Then it was like, oh, it's just a matter of time now. But then he started throwing back a little bit. It was like, oh, maybe he might be able to swing his way back in. But then it was sloppy, and it was like, oh man. And then Gane goes and finished the fight. And yeah, Gane, dude, he is so underrated. Because you like, especially in terms of a striker. Because his only two losses, like he lost to Francis Ngannou, which a lot of it was grappling, and then he lost to John Jones, again, arguably the greatest grappler we've seen in UFC history. But anytime that it's just a pure kickboxing match, Gane hasn't lost. And then even like in the first round against Aspinall, he was piecing him up the whole first round, which based off what we've seen now, I think it's pretty safe to say. I mean, I guess it's not, but it's kind of safe to say that Gane would have won that. Like to me, Gane is the undisputed champ. Because I also don't think Aspinall, the whole deal with Eddie Hearn, I think he's going to end up getting released. Like they won't be able to work something out. So going into this, I thought whoever wins this is going to be the undisputed champ. So I think now Ciryl Gane is pretty much the real heavyweight champion. And yeah, for Pereira, it's like I think Pereira needs to retire at this point too, because like what are his options? He fights again at heavy. It's almost like he's achieved, like, even though I think he's a little bit overrated, he has on paper achieved a lot. And it's like, what reason do you have to keep fighting? Like, why would you have a fight with Pavlovich or Hokit or so? Why would you fight like a non-title fight at heavyweight? There's really no point. And then, okay, well, he could go back down to light heavyweight. I think Olberg gives him a tough fight because Olberg is a lot like, he's a huge light heavyweight and he has that kind of precise, I don't want to say touch of death because I don't think it's a touch of death, but maybe it is. But it's that precise. It's not just like, oh, I am explosive and I hit hard, but it's that like, he blew out his fucking knee and he's on one foot, throws a left hook, and then it just like cold somebody. So I think, that's a hard fight for Pereira to come back to at light heavyweight. And then it's like, then how does that benefit you? Being a 3-time light heavyweight, like that doesn't really mean much. So I really do think he might actually retire. Because then again, he has all the money on paper. He's done a lot, 2-division champion, 2-time light heavyweight champion. He has the legacy, but it's like, there's really not a good path. Like, when you look at the two options, staying a heavyweight or going back to light heavyweight, it just doesn't seem worth it for him. So I think he should retire. I think he probably will retire. And because yeah, again, it's not going to be like he's going to go and take a contender fight to try to get back on. Like it's just, that's not going to happen. And then for Ciryl Gane, like I said, I think he's going to now end up being the undisputed champ. His first title defense, I think now, which we'll get to this when I talk about Hokit and Derrick Lewis, but I think you have Pavlovich. No. Yes. You have Pavlovich versus Hokit, number 1 contender fight. And then I think you have Gane versus Volkov 3. Because that's the other thing. How good is Volkov now? Volkov, he beat Ciryl Gane. That was one of, if not the biggest robbery I've ever seen. He clearly beat Ciryl Gane. What was it, like a year and a half ago? So like that's what we've learned. We're learning so many things now with everything that's happened like on this card. So I think you owe it to Volkov. He deserves it. He pretty much beat him. And there's, well, technically, yeah, that was a rematch. So now it would be a trilogy. I think you need to do Gane versus Volkov 3 because he, like, he deserves it. And he arguably beat him. He did beat him. And then you have Pavlovich and Hokit, number one contender fight. Whoever wins that fight's the winner of Gane and Volkov. So I think that's pretty much set for the, like, that's what should happen in the heavyweight division. So now we'll go to Sean O'Malley and Aiemann Zahabi. Oh, this one felt good, dude. If you see on X, Sean O'Malley is my second favorite fighter behind Sean Strickland, which I know that's pretty diverse. My top three favorite fighters are Strickland, O'Malley, and Patty, which is the most random lineup of fighters. But O'Malley goes and gets it done, and it was so satisfying because really I was getting so frustrated the whole fight because Zahabi just wouldn't stop running, and he'd put up that kind of Philly shell. It wasn't like a Strickland Philly shell. It was more of like he was putting that Philly shell all the way up to his forehead. And he was basically running around and trying to just avoid the big shots, and then was spamming that little weak ass low kick that Grogan would not stop glazing. I literally had to almost mute my TV because he would acknowledge every single calf kick. And it wasn't, there's there's some blue or whatever on O'Malley's legs. And it didn't look like it was affecting his movement at all. And O'Malley, really, he just did more in the first round, but that's where I was like, man, that's just going to suck if he ends up winning this by decision, but it's not that entertaining because Zahabi basically runs the whole time. That's where I was just like, Zahabi, just open up, please. And then second round is just more of the same of what happened in the first round. And then he finally opens up. O'Malley lands the left hand at the same time that Zahabi threw a left hand. So they're both throwing and finally clips it, which that also shows O'Malley still has that power in his hands because Zahabi is shown to be very durable. And it wasn't like one of those shots that O'Malley really sat on. It was kind of like they were both straight up and he just ripped the left hand and it dropped him bad. And then he runs up, throws the right hand, and then, that sits him down bad. I think, he face planted. And then O'Malley hit the salute. That's how you get your aura back, dude. O'Malley's aura peaked right before the Merab fight. And especially, whenever Cheeto actually looked, better than he does now. And then he went the way he beat Cheeto and just the whole aura of it, that's when it peaked. And then it really dropped off. Even with the last win against Song, even though I think that was a great performance, it wasn't amazing. So it's he got the win, but it wasn't like how it was at the peak of his superstardom. That was his first knockout since Aljamain Sterling, to win the title. But it's it was a tailor-made matchup for him. But I mean, Zahabi was on a 7-fight win streak, was really durable. It's a great win. 14-2 overall. And that's exactly what the UFC wanted to happen. That was exactly what needed to happen. And I think that's actually perfect for the bantamweight division, O'Malley's career, because now he's got it back. He got the knockout and, hit the salute. And it's all the pictures are going to be all over social media, everything. It's going to be it's a huge deal now. Yeah, he's just got it back. The aura is back. Those type of moments, those highlight reel moments. And that's also going to be huge for his confidence because I really do think he could have beaten Song Yadong even more. I don't know if he would have knocked him out, but I think he could have put it on him a lot more because it's he didn't really look that confident until the end of the third round. Once he realized that he could just land at will basically and just speed mog him, then that's when he started landing a lot. So it's how the end of that fight ended, or how the end of that fight played out, and then now coming out and sleeping Zahabi, and then having that huge moment. It's at the White House, everything, a ton of eyes. Has that classic, vintage performance, the highlight reel. That's going to be huge for his confidence, especially going into possibly the rematch with Peter Yan. And that sets up so perfectly that rematch. I think Peter Yan's going to beat Merab in this trilogy. They'll probably have it in August or something like that. And if Jan wins, then it like no question. As soon as Jan wins that fight, you go and set up Jan versus O'Malley too. Like there's not many fights that are perfect for rematches. Like that's one of them. The controversy of the first, like O'Malley has a win on paper against Jan, but then a ton of people think Jan won that fight. It's just perfect. And then especially now, like O'Malley, like I said before, he's got his confidence back, and it's just gonna be. It'll set up so perfectly. Where now he probably actually thinks he can go out there and beat Peter Yan, because he beat him the first time, and then now he's kind of got that. He's just got his confidence back, so that'll lead up to having like it'll be a huge build up. That's the perfect fight to make. So now we'll go Josh Hokit and Derrick Lewis. Well, I guess I would say what's next for Aiemann Zahabi? I don't know, just somebody. I don't think anyone really cares about Aiemann Zahabi, so I'm not going to talk about him that much. So Josh Hokit and Derrick Lewis. My boy Hokit, dude. The heavyweight savior. It's funny, so many people hate him, but it's like I kind of gravitate towards fighters that people don't really like just because it's so funny watching other people's reactions when they're so hated, but then they just go and keep winning anyway and then become huge stars. Like, so with Hokit, and then also I like Hokit just because he's American, like he loves his country, incredibly based, so I like him and he's entertaining. But with that fight, I was kind of nervous because it's, I was watching they were showing the highlights where Derrick Lewis, like Blades goes in for a takedown and then he hits him with that uppercut and then Blades is literally like moaning on the ground. And that was just playing in my head where I'm like, God, please don't let that happen. And so early, Hokit did what he needed to do, where it was just like basically trying to get him biting on feints, not get anywhere near him. And I think he landed a few decent shots, like maybe like a few jabs. And then he went in and he got the takedown. I think it was because Lewis actually opened up, used the momentum, and Hokit took him down really easily. And even I was like, that was actually way easier than I thought it would be. Because it's like Hokit, even though he's way more athletic, he's like 30 pounds lighter. So I didn't know if it was going to be like, oh, it's going to be hard for him to take him down. But no, he did it pretty easily. And then I thought that was going to be it. I thought it was going to play out exactly. Also, I forgot real quick with O'Malley and Zahabi. Again, that pick was perfect. I said O'Malley knockout within the 3. So then, all right, back to Josh Hokit and Derrick Lewis. I thought that it was going to play out exactly as I said before, where he would take him down, get into a dominant position, and then just land ground and pound, which that looked like what he was going to do. But then Derrick Lewis was literally just sticking his hands out, like straight up, and he couldn't really hit the mark. And then I thought that he was going to get the submission with the armbar, but I mean, his submission game, I guess, really isn't that good because he was just doing the armbar completely wrong. Like, he was basically like twisting his wrist or something. Like, he wasn't doing it right. And so then it goes to the second round, and then again, you just see Derrick Lewis giving up, super sluggish and slow. And then that's where Hokit was like, realized that he was tired and defeated and started letting his hands go and was landing at will. And which I knew that it would be kind of hard for him to knock him out because again, Hokit, it's always going to be so hard for a guy to knock somebody out who's way bigger than them. Which that's why he didn't knock out Curtis Blades, even though Curtis Blades is a little bit chinny. It's just that he is like a small heavyweight. He has the speed advantage, everything like that, but the power is always going to be lacking, since he's the smaller guy. But then it was because Lewis was it was like an accumulation. Lewis was gassed. And then he started, ripping those shots. And then he just, like we saw against Waldo or anytime he faces adversity, just kind of give up. But I think Hokit did really rock him with the last few shots. And then it was just like, all right, that's enough. That's enough of an excuse to just fall over. And then he ended it. It's funny because Josh Hokit, he's beefing with Topuria and Pereira. I think he was beefing with somebody else on this card that lost, but mainly Topuria and Pereira. And they go and get finished. And it's like these huge losses for them. And then it's just funny because then it's like every single person he's beefed with went and lost. And he's just like, keeps skyrocketing. it's just funny because then so many people hate him and he just comes in out of nowhere and it's like having all this success. And really, that fight was always going to be a lock for him, but it was just, the possibility of that super slow but extremely powerful shot, which I knew if he fought smart, it was guaranteed for him to win. So for him next, I think it's so clear they need to do him versus Pavlovich, and that's going to be a hard fight for him because Pavlovich is really good now, and he has, speaking of getting your confidence back, Pavlovich definitely has confidence back. So I think that's the pretty obvious number one contender fight while you have Volkov go and get his title shot. Um, assuming Aspinall vacates or like gets cut, which I think is very likely to happen. But yeah, it's just Hokit's going to have to keep improving, which I think he can't. Like the fact that he's doing this while he's only trained for like 4 or 5 years, and a lot of his fights are, basically striking. So like he had the wrestling background and all that, but like all these moments with striking have all come within the last few years. So it's like he has a ton of room for improvement. And I mean, he could give like Pavlovich a tough fight because he does have great grappling. It's just that he can't be, even whenever he was like trying to do like the oblique kicks against Derrick Lewis, I was like, don't do that. And then he just like lunges in as soon as you throw it. He looks sloppy at times, but I think he does game plan very well, and he trains one of the best gyms in the country. So, yeah, I think by the time that would come around, that actually would be competitive. And then Derrick Lewis, yeah, just retired. I mean, you collected your check, you got to do whatever, just retired. Then who was the fight before that? Oh, Ruffy and Chandler. I felt bad for Chandler, dude. Like it was sad because with Chandler, I mean, it's almost like whenever two cars, like someone's running through a red light and then someone else is going when it's supposed to be their turn. It's like you see it happening and you just can't. It's like, oh, it's about to, like, you want to look away, but you just can't. That's how it was the whole time with Ruffy and Chandler. Because also, Ruffy was just being patient, just waiting for the right shot. And it's like, oh man. Like, Chandler goes, the only punch he landed was a Superman punch whenever he, like, jumped off the side of the fence. But yeah, you could just tell Ruffy was waiting. He was just being smart, waiting for the right shot, and that was just, an eventuality. And like the spinning heel, he lands the spinning heel kick, and then like a few shots to the body, uh, uppercuts, or no, yeah, it was the spinning heel kick that dropped him. And I was like, okay, just call it, just let this be done. But then, yeah, they let poor Chandler try to work his way back in the fight, and then he ate a few right hands and then slumped over on the floor. I was like, yeah, that wasn't really necessary. So yeah, we all knew that would happen for Ruffy. Like I picked Ruffy by knockout, just like everybody else did. And Ruffy, I think he needs to have a top five. That was really just a filler fight. So like now he should be able to go back into the top five. I mean, maybe I'm trying to think. Lightweight's kind of weird now because if Gaethje retired, like Holloway's going to fight McGregor 170, which he's not going to stay at 170. He'll probably go back down to 155. So that could be a fight, Ruffy and Holloway. But Armin, Patty, BSD, uh, yeah, which I think the winner of Patty BSD is going to get a title shot. So it's like he wouldn't fight one of them. Maybe he'd fight the loser. Well, he already lost to BSD. I forgot. But who knows? It should be somebody in the top five though. And then Chandler. I mean, again, he should just retire. Then what was the fight before that? Bo Nickal and Kyle Daukaus. Sorry, I'm getting tired, dude. It's late over here. But Bo Nickal and Kyle Daukaus. Kyle Daukaus, I took a chance with him. That was my upset pick. I had Daukaus by knockout just because I thought he had so many parallels to RDR and had a threatening submission game. But yeah, he reverted to old ways, and I mean that was like the. I still don't think Bo Nickal's that good because he took down Daukaus and he controlled him, but like nothing was really happening. I mean, he landed a couple good elbows. They shouldn't have like gotten him back up, but he really wasn't doing that much. And then he goes and lands a left hand that's, coming from a mile away. And then Daukaus still just goes and stands there and eats it. Yeah, I still just don't think he's that good. Like, you know what they need to do? They should have him versus Izzy. because he's a great wrestler, but then like Izzy's really tall and lanky, but he is kind of like big for middleweight. That would just be a weirdly interesting stylistic matchup. And it's like, is he still? It would be a huge fight. Is he still in the top 10? I think it is a winnable fight for Izzy. I mean, anybody that loses to Reinier de Ritter has, anybody that yeah, anybody that loses to Reinier de Ritter has the possibility of losing to Izzy. Yeah, I think I said that right. But yeah, I think that should be the next fight. It would be huge, and it actually would be competitive, in my opinion. Kyle Daukaus, I mean, I don't know. I'm starting to lose steam here. What was the first? Oh, yeah. Steve Garcia and Diego Lopes. Also a fight that went exactly as I predicted. Really, in total, I went 5 out of 7 with my predictions. And this one in particular was spot on, where I basically said that Lopes, like, they were going to eventually get into an exchange, which I think a lot of people thought this too, but where they would get into an exchange and Lopes just lives for those moments where he can just plant his feet and start swinging. He's not that great whenever you're trying to have when he's trying to have a technical back and forth. He's not that great because Steve Garcia fought a great first round and was really kind of piecing him up. And that's where I was like, he's actually not really pressuring in the way that I thought he would. Because I thought that he would get knocked out because he's just kind of lunging in at Lopes, which he basically did end up doing that by trying to engage with him in like those exchanges. But in the first round, he was fighting perfectly, which I thought, like, if Steve Garcia fights smart and tries to like use his length and pick him apart, he can win this fight. And that's what he was doing. I was like, wow, he's actually not like, this is a perfect game plan. He's not pressuring. Like, he looks great. But then like, one shot landed for Lopes, and then for some reason Garcia thought, "Oh, I got hit hard. Now let's brawl." Like, which was just dumb. I felt bad for Garcia, dude, because I was kind of pulling for him, and he's a good dude, and I mean, so is Lopes, so it's not that bad. But yeah, so Steve Garcia, I really do think that he'll be one of those guys that ends up getting to the top 5. But the thing is, he's already 35, so maybe not. But then Lopes, I still think Lopes needs to go up to 155. Like, they just had that fight for the White House, but like, he's never going to beat Volkanovski. I don't think he beats guys like John Silva in a rematch. I think like the lighter man skill would help his striking more at lightweight, and I think he would still carry power. And there's some great matchups for him, like, interesting stylistic fights. Like, imagine Lopes and Holloway, dude. Like, that would be a pretty sick fight. So, yeah, that's my recap of UFC Freedom 250. In my opinion, the greatest UFC event that they've ever put on. I'm gonna be making a lot of videos out of this. That, like, my next video after this will probably be, every fight, which I kind of discussed it vaguely throughout this, but like, I'll like, look at the rankings, every fight to make for the winner and loser of every fight on the White House, something like that. And then I'll even go into specifics, like, I want to talk more about the state of lightweight now that Gaethje won the title, and like what's next for Ilia, and then possible vacant titles, everything like that. So yeah, if you watched all the way up to this point, then I mean, there's no way, because I think I've been filming for 45 minutes. But yeah, thanks for watching. Like and subscribe. See you guys next time.